All right, it's 9 o'clock, and I'll call to order the November 22nd meeting of the Saline County Commission. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Shadwick, Commissioner Sparks, Commissioner Vidrickson.
Here.
Commissioner Weiss.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Yes, ma'am.
If we could all now stand for a flag salute in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now comes the portion of our meeting where the citizens' input is welcome. If anyone would like to address the commission, please come forward and state your name. Seeing no one, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of approval of public forum agenda, approval of a memorandum of understanding Saline County Mental Health co-responders, approval of County Commission minutes of November 8th, approval of County Commission minutes of November 15th, approval of County Commission minutes for November 17th, approval of correction orders as presented, approval of cereal malt beverage license 145069, approval of accounts payable, and approval of payroll. Any items that the commissioners wish to address on this consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, item number 2, the approval of memorandum of understanding. There's 9 pages of outline here for this, and we've had no discussion. I watched the city commission meeting yesterday, and they took, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 minutes, had a presentation and so forth. For me to just rubber stamp this and pass it through is, I'm not in favor of that.
Commissioner, yeah, so this was discussed with the commission several months ago, actually. This is just signing the agreement, which is why it's on the consent calendar. It was actually discussed so long ago, it's probably been forgotten about at this point. The delay was really going back and forth around the terms of the agreement, but the commission has already approved this. It's one of the ARPA programs. This is signing the actual document.
I guess my question then would be if there was back and forth between, I'd like to hear some of the back and forth.
Okay, Mr. Administrator, would it work to take item number 2 off of the consent agenda and put it on action items as 1A?
We could certainly do that, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that'd be fine.
I would be in favor of that.
All right.
I'm sure it's going to pass, don't get me wrong, but I just want a better understanding of it. And you're right. I was thinking this morning when I was reading some more of this that we had discussed this, but it was, like you said, so long ago I don't remember what we discussed.
And
so
a brief overview would be appreciated. So,
that having been said, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the withdrawal of item number 2 and putting it into an action item of 1A.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the consent agenda with the above mentioned changes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we now move to, let's throw a curveball at the county clerk. Moving to our action items.
Update and proposed change for the ARPA funding.
Actually, we have 1A, which will be approval of memorandum of understanding with Saline County Mental Health co-responders.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as part of the American Rescue Plan Act funding, which we'll be discussing in 1B here in a minute, we several months ago considered what we would do for criminal justice and public safety around the community and divided that into a number of different programs. One of those programs is to deal with the backlog in the court system here in this building, and we allocated some funding to that purpose in the county budget. And then another of those programs was a grant program, which we called Safer and Healthier Saline County, and we accepted grant applications, went through a review process, and you made awards for those earlier. Those have all those grant agreements have been signed. The biggest project within the criminal justice is, of course, the renovation of the courtrooms here on the third floor of this building. That is still to be determined, but we'll be talking about that later this morning as well. But the last program within that block of criminal justice, public safety, and mental health programs was a program that is exists in several other communities around the state, which is to place a mental health co-responder with law enforcement as they go out into the field and deal with subjects who really don't need to be going to the jail and taking up bed space, but really need to be placed in a place where they can get some treatment for a mental health condition. And so, as I said, there are a number of communities around the state that already have this program in place. Saline County has been looking at this program for quite a while. And when the ARPA funding became available, this was one of the things that we wanted to target the funding to do. This is a trial program. And so funding is allocated for a couple of years as part of our ARPA funding, with the hope that it will be successful and continue in the future. It is a three-party arrangement between Saline County as both the funder and a participant in the form of the sheriff's office, the city of Salina through their police department, because of course they make the majority of the arrests in the community and stops in the community, and Central Kansas Mental Health Center, because they are the local community mental health center, and they also have the expertise to do this. So the Memorandum of Understanding that's before the Commission today is based in large part on examples from other places around the state, including what exists in Riley County. And we've had presentations from Riley County about what has worked successfully and not worked successfully in their community, as well as Shawnee County and a few others. So that sort of exhausts my level of knowledge of this. As I said, the MOU has been batted back and forth between those three parties a few times. Mr. Montoya wanted some changes. The city attorney wanted some changes. But we do have in attendance today representatives from the Sheriff's Office, the Salina Police Department, and Central Kansas Mental Health, and they could add to my knowledge of the item if you would like to hear from any of them.
I'm guessing that my questions will require that one of them answer it. I thought, when I listened to the city meeting yesterday, that in your reference that the clinician would be riding with would be going with the police department, and I understood that they would not be riding with the police department most of the time. Is that correct?
It's twofold. They would ride with patrol officers, but they could also be at the station and an officer or a deputy be out on a call for service and need their assistance. And in that case, then we would provide them with a vehicle. They would travel to the scene and help the law enforcement person, whether it's PD or Sheriff's Department, and assist in dealing with a person that's in mental health crisis. The other part of that is we're hoping that with this program, these folks will also be able to do follow-up services. Obviously, to start out, we're not going to have them 24/7. So when they are not at work, we would still follow the same protocols that we currently follow. With the exception being then the next day when the co-responder would come to work, they would have a list of the folks that we've dealt with or the Sheriff's Department's dealt with the previous day, and make sure that they do some follow-up services with those people to find out if they're going to their meetings, get them to, if they need to get prescriptions, whatever the case might be, in hopes that we can eliminate having to deal with these same folks 5, 6 times in a week.
I get that part of it. Paul, what I'm trying to determine though, when this clinician comes to work, they're gonna get in a patrol car at that time and ride?
Initially, yes. In talking to the folks from Riley County, that was probably the best training for both sides. The clinician gets to see how law enforcement handles these calls for service. And on the flip side, the officers get to see how the clinicians talk to these folks and the questions that they're going to be asking. And so initially, they said that was what they recommended to us, is to have the co-responders just go out and do a lot of ride-alongs with officers.
That makes perfect sense. Funding, and these clinicians are going to be employees of the Central Kansas Mental Health, is that correct?
Correct.
So our ARPA funding, does that go to Central Kansas Mental Health, or does that go to this organization, this newly funded responder project, and then they pay them? How does this work, and how much is it?
It's $199,125, and that again is over a 2-year period. Yes, our funding will largely go to Central Kansas Mental Health for the purpose of employing the clinicians. There are some in-kind services that Saline PD is providing, desk and radio and those sorts of things, that they will be contributing as well. But the majority of the American Rescue Plan Act funding will be passed through to Central Kansas Mental Health Center.
So initially, our budget will not be affected, if I'm reading this correctly.
That's correct. The county's budget will not be impacted for, as I said, this is a 2-year pilot program. There is the potential after the 2 years that if it's successful, the commission, both the Saline County Commission and the Salina City Commission, could choose to fund it in the future out of tax resources.
Or we could choose either City of Salina or Saline County could withdraw from it and let the other one take over from that standpoint. Is that?
That would be correct.
I had another one on the tip of my tongue that's escaped me all of a sudden. But I mean, obviously, I'm in favor of this as in the concept of it. But there's just so many things here that are gnawing at me, I guess. I'm not coming up with anything else that would be a reasonable question.
One question I have, and I'm sure one of our guests can answer it, but when a need arises and this person is needing treatment, but maybe not incarceration, is there a place, will Central Kansas Mental Health have the facility to accept this person, or does it go to booking and be put in our new jail, the medical area, or how will that be handled?
Glenna Phillips, Executive Director from Central Kansas Mental Health. So we have 24/7 responders. The big thing will be is to divert them and not have to put them someplace. It's to address the crisis when it's happening right then and there. We do not have a facility like a hospital or anything like that yet, but the whole outcome is to divert these individuals and get the care that they need right then and there.
So to be handled on scene and
Handled on
hopefully
scene.
resolved at that
Hopefully
level.
be resolved. If not, then we follow our protocol for if there's substance abuse, will they be willing to do substance abuse detox if there's a bed available? If it's fully mental health, then we would go through the process of our provider on site being able to screen them right then and there to determine the need for hospitalization.
I see. Thank you.
I guess my next question would be to the administrator and the sheriff, perhaps, with our new jail, and I know that we provided space for this occasion. How will that affect this process? Will we still be going to have a clinician on staff like we were planning before?
Yes, that's going to be separate than what the mental health provider in the jail will be, although they'll be working close together. Hopefully our records will intermix so that if we're out on the street, if a co-responder goes out, they can have access to what has happened to them in the past, including in the jail. So we think it's going to be a big benefit to try and keep people out of the system. Once you get them involved in the system, whether it's municipal court or district court, if they're homeless, if they have mental health issues, they don't show up for court, then we issue a warrant for their arrest. Then they're in our jail, they can't bond out, and that's when we start having the time consumption of deputies, corrections officers, having to deal with these people that are in jail.
For the record, for those watching, you might state your name and your
Brent
position.
Melander, Saline County Sheriff's Office.
And you're the undersheriff?
Yes, sir, undersheriff.
Is that what his official title?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we're looking forward to it, and Saline Police Department and Central Kansas Mental Health and Phil done a lot of work on this, and I think it's going to be a big benefit. We don't know. That's why it's 2 years, but I think it is.
Well, we've got to learn somewhere. Yeah, is it going to work or not? I mean, who knows? But we've got to lay a foundation, and get started somewhere. We're lucky right now, I guess, in that we've got this ARPA funding to get this thing off the ground, and I guess we better take advantage of it. It sounds like.
Yep, I would like to see that happen.
I know that the city commission yesterday was fully in favor of it, and I have another question. As far as responses for a clinician type confrontation, if you will, city has, I would think of the city as having all of those problems, not outside of the city limits to affect the sheriff's office. Can you tell us, do you have a lot of situations outside of the city limits that would require this service also?
Yes, Saline County seems to have its share of people that are either passing through or reside out in the county that have mental health issues that we get sent to on calls, welfare checks, disturbances. So it's not unusual for us to be sent out on someone walking through one of the smaller towns that doesn't live there. Early in the morning, late at night, somebody thinks they're suspicious, which is in their right, and we go out and start talking to them, and we can tell that there's an issue with them mental health-wise. And the goal of this, to have a responder, would be to prevent us from having to take them to the hospital for mental health evaluation or prevent them from getting in trouble enough to go to jail. Hopefully they can take care of that on scene, making arrangements the following day or maybe making arrangements that night to get help instead of us, law enforcement, taking them into custody, and it's going to save us a lot of time if that happens.
This is maybe, I hope it doesn't sound too stupid of a question, but how do we determine if there's issues going on different, who gets to use this clinician if there's more than one response?
Law enforcement is, and I'm speaking solely on the part of the sheriff's office, we're not mental health professionals, but when you talk to somebody, you can kind of tell that there's something not right. In that situation, if we think they're a harm to themselves or others, and there may be some other evidence, maybe somebody says, yeah, they threatened to kill themselves, a lot of times we have to take that person into custody, transport them to the hospital, and maybe sit with them for 3-4 hours for an evaluation to be done by a professional. And at that time, it could be the doctor or whoever is talking to them says, we don't feel that they're a harm to themselves or others, and we usually will take them home or wherever they want to go. If they are harm to themselves, then they will be admitted either into the hospital or they're going to be sent to Larned. In that case, then we have to call another sheriff's office for transport to take them to Larned. Or if there's criminal charges following that, then we take them and book them in the jail. So having a first responder or a co-responder out there will hopefully eliminate some of our, I don't want to say liability, but will help us determine if this person actually needs mental health help or not.
Well, I guess in closing for my part, the collaboration between the community organizations is appreciated, that we're trying to get along, trying to work together, trying to make something work. And if it takes all three organizations to get that done, that's what we need to be doing. And appreciate the efforts on all of your parts, including the administrative, police chief, sheriff's office, and so forth. So thank you.
So thank you for considering it.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment, and we have discussed this multiple times. Everybody at the time was in favor of it. I'm glad we had a review of it, and I'll even give some kudos to our local paper, and there's been several articles, front page if I recall correctly, when we were having that discussion, and now I'm confused, and this is for the administrator. We've got 1A, but yet it kind of spills over into item 1. What do we need for official action for this?
Thank you, Commissioner. I would recommend that you go ahead and adopt or approve a signature on the Memorandum of Understanding, and then we can just roll right into the next item. They are quite related, as you said.
Okay, before any action is taken, since this did become an action item, is there any questions, comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. All right, I'll bite. I move that we approve item 1A, approval of Memorandum of Understanding, Saline County Mental Health Co-Responders.
Second the motion.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, move on to 1B.
Update and proposed changes for ARPA funding. Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
Hey, good morning again. So yes, we've just had a conversation about one specific program that is funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. As the Commission will recall, we received $10,532,376 in federal funds as part of the sort of Stimulus 3 package related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have spent well over a year at this point trying to spend those funds in the best way possible to benefit this community and its economic recovery. We have adopted a framework plan that divides the programs into different categories and have been making regular updates to the Commission on various proposals within those funding categories. So today is another one of those updates and recommendations for some changes. There is one item recommended today that I would characterize as wholly new, and that is that the Saline Area Technical College has received a grant from the state to start up a new program in industrial maintenance and automation, and they are seeking grant match funding for that. That is not something that we had previously considered as part of our ARPA allocation because this is a new program for Saline Tech. But we've been able to identify, by moving funds around, $90,000 in our business and nonprofit recovery funding that staff would recommend that we allocate to Saline Tech for that grant match purpose. We feel that this is very related to the local economic recovery because the program that they are standing up in industrial maintenance and automation is designed to help local manufacturers employ increased automation and reduce the demand for employees, which we all know are at a premium in this economy. Beyond that wholly new program, there are a couple programs that I would characterize as shifts in the way that we planned to spend the money. So one of those is a recommendation to contract with a software provider for an additional public information resource called Zen City 360. Now, we have been doing public information about the American Rescue Plan operation since we started receiving the funding last summer. But as you know, the county has now taken in-house what used to be a contract for a public information officer. So we're no longer needing to spend funding for hourly rates for her, and instead we would recommend that we go ahead and contract with this software, which would help with public engagement. On the flip side, we hired an intern this year to assist us with some of the tracking of our grant work and helping our grant recipients to make sure that they were reporting properly. That has been great, but as interns do, he found a permanent job. So he left us, and there is not another staff person on board who is capable of filling that role right now. And it's the wrong time of year, frankly, to get another intern because they're typically on the market when graduation occurs, right? So the recommendation there is to sign a third task order with iParametrics, our ARPA consultants. This would be for a lower level staff person in their organization, so a little bit cheaper on an hourly rate, who would provide some of those services that the intern was formerly providing. And the third sort of change in scope is for a tire removal project. We had allocated $20,000 to clean up excess tires, used tires in the community. We had a very successful program with the Farm Bureau, but they spent well less than half of what we had allocated to them. They would like to do an additional program, and we're supportive of that in the spring. But we also partnered, as the Commission will recall, with North Salina Community Development on a community cleanup effort. They ended up actually dealing with more tires than Farm Bureau had. And so they have requested if we could come up with about $3,731.99 to help cover some of those excess tire disposal costs. Staff believes that can be accommodated within that original $20,000 allocation and still allow us to do a second event with Farm Bureau, which would be a win for the community. Then we have an award to emergency management for disaster kits. This is one that has been on our list for quite a while. It's not a change. It's just finally getting around to moving it from our future programs to our current programs category. And then there are a couple of small cleanup items. One is to adjust funding to Saline County Rural Water District number 7. And then to adjust some funding for a future health department program and a future program with K-State Salina and the Salina Airport Authority. Those are the recommended changes today. Those are all summarized in a table that is attached to your written documentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions about any of that.
I'd like to go back to the grant match for the Salina Area Technical College, and it says that the state, if I'm understanding this, $1,800,000 is going to be available. And if they were to raise the money, they could have raised as much as an addition. To receive that $1.8 million, they've got to raise $1.8 million. If they raise $500,000, that's all they get is $500,000.
You got it, Commissioner. That's exactly correct.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of that. I mean, this is well outlined, Phil, and thank you and for these updates and breakdown and just like the previous thing that we talked about. It happened so long ago, we tend to forget it, and I really appreciate going back to the first part where it shows how much money we gave to everyone, and I'm going to take a little bit better care of this one so that I've got it for my planning next time.
And Phil, it might be beneficial for this meeting, kind of give us a brief overview on Zen City and they mentioned NACO and early adopters program. I mean, could you elaborate a little bit about them? Because I'm not really familiar, and like I say, it may be beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. So, Zen City is a software company that their business is around public engagement. And they started out as a social media tracking company for local governments. And so they would aggregate comments that were posted on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram regarding cities and counties and help determine sort of the mood of the community, right? And so we actually used them in that capacity as part of the lead up to the jail vote. We engaged with them for a 6-month period. We didn't find that particular piece of their service to be all that thrilling. It was helpful, but it wasn't sort of revolutionary. And so after that 6-month trial, we decided not to renew with them. They have since expanded their business model, and they have a new program which is called Zen City 360, which is focused not so much on that social media monitoring as on direct engagement. So they now offer things like surveys, like project-specific portals, where the community can come on and leave comments about particular things that we're doing, and actually we can go out and direct people to sites and try and help people understand what we are doing with the American Rescue Plan funding and also get feedback.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Question, Mr. Administrator. The disaster kits that the emergency management is requesting, what do they consist of? Do you know?
They consist of a wide variety of things that are useful. There's a tarp in there to if somebody's shingles have blown off. There's a water bottle in there. There's a heat pad in there. I mean, it's a wide variety of things that folks in Saline County might need in the event of a disaster, whether that be a tornado or a freeze event or high winds, all the kinds of things that we typically experience here in the course of a couple-year period. And the idea is that many of our lower income folks in the community, everybody understands the importance of preparing for disaster, but many folks just simply don't have the resources to do that. And so this is a great partnership. Commissioner Vidrickson talked about the partnership with the co-responders. This is a partnership between emergency management and a number of local businesses that would like to sponsor some of these kits as well. And so the funding that's being requested from the Commission through American Rescue Plan Act funds would fund the first 120 of those kits. They believe they can get 340 additional kits privately funded once they sort of get that kick started. So it's a wide variety of different things that people might need.
Thank you.
So this program's kind of the same thing as a flood event in the past, and Saline County supplied sandbags and sand and manpower and even transportation in the past. It's been a long time ago, thank God, but
yeah, this is sort of getting out in front of, those kinds of things are more response, and this is more preparedness. So, yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the Commission? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Commission.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve by signature the changes as presented.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. We approve update and proposed changes for ARPA funding 2022-50. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 2.
Award of construction manager at risk with Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
So we're kind of on a roll with ARPA. So as I mentioned earlier in our discussion of co-responders, the largest allocation of funding from American Rescue Plan Act funds in that category around criminal justice and public safety is for the renovation of 2 additional courtrooms on the 3rd floor of the city county building. We've allocated over $2.2 million of ARPA funding to that. In addition to that, we have set aside some county CIP resources to both complete that project and also renovate 2 other office suites within this building so that we can move some folks around and accommodate those new courtrooms. And we have engaged with Jones Gillum Wren's local architects to design that project. Upon recommendation from JGR, they said, you know, we think we could speed up this process if we get a construction manager at risk on board. And so the commission did authorize us to go out and seek firms for a construction manager at risk. We issued a competitive solicitation for that, and we received 2 responses. They were both from highly qualified firms. JGR has worked with both of them in the past. Review committee consisting of myself and the court administrator reviewed those, and we both came to the same conclusion, which is that one of those firms just scored a little bit higher than the other, and the firm that we are recommending is Hutton. We have engaged with Hutton on a number of other projects around the county, as you know, including renovations at the Expo Center. And so our recommendation is that we award the construction manager at risk services to Hutton, and we are currently reviewing the actual contract documents. Mr. Montoya has those in his possession. Those would come back to the commission for approval if you give us the authorization to proceed, and I would be happy to answer questions about that.
I take it that there has been no physical work started with the 3rd floor at this point.
That's correct. So the first project that we started was at 229 North 9th Street, the old juvenile center. And so that's a separate architect and a separate contractor, and we've got that work underway. And in fact, it's scheduled to be completed in about 3 weeks. And so that was sort of what I would call a necessary precursor in order to get everything else in line. So JGR has been working very hard on the design drawings for the 3rd floor, but no physical work has occurred other than the fact that Todd Heitschmidt has moved his office from the 3rd floor down to the 1st floor.
And the purpose of my question was because I saw a whole fleet of Hutton trucks outside today, so I didn't know if anything had started.
So Hutton actually is also the contractor. They do a lot of work around the community. So they are the contractor for the building authority for work that's occurring on the outside of the building. So if you'll recall, there were 2 large brick planters that were taken down on the east and west sides of the building and have been replaced by landscaping. And Hutton is the general contractor on that project.
And they have had subs working under them.
That's correct.
To do
landscaping,
concrete work,
irrigation, yes,
et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions of the administrator? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for possible action.
Mr. Chairman, I move we award the construction manager at risk services for the project to Hutton and direct staff to prepare contract documents and return at a later date for signature.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we award a approve awarding of construction manager at risk agreement 2022-51. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, informational items. Item number 1.
County Administrator's update with Philip Smith Haynes, County Administrator.
I'm sorry, it's kind of the Phil show today.
I need to get a drink of water here in a minute.
There are 2 items that I wanted to update the commission on this morning. Just things that we need to be aware of that are going on. The first is the lease at the Community Corrections Facility on South Broadway. We entered into a long-term lease for that facility back in 2017. So it's a 10-year term. Initially, so rent was fixed for the first 5 years, which this happens to be the end of that 5 years, and then we'll adjust up and then be fixed for the next 5 years. The landlord at that facility is actually looking to sell that property to another local buyer, and the question has come up about the interpretation of the language for what that rent is supposed to do in year 10. It's sort of a theoretical problem at this point because we're not at year 10, and but the seller and local real estate agent representing the buyer wanted to get some clarification on that, so spoke with Mr. Montoya and myself, and we've talked with Community Corrections, and everybody is in agreement that the existing lease wasn't written that well, but we all think we know what it means, which is that at year 10, the rent will go to a fixed dollar amount plus the then existing costs for insurance, taxes, and one other thing that I can't recall off the top of my head. And then those will be rolled in and inflated for any remaining renewal terms, but not readjusted again. So Mr. Montoya is going to prepare language to clean that up, get that signed by the landlord, and then we'll be bringing it back to you for approval. It's just a cleanup item. It's not changing any of the terms. It's not changing the existing rent, but I wanted you to be aware of it so that when it appears on your agenda, you'll know what it's about.
And it would not be obligating us at year 10 to...
It would not be obligating us to renew. That's correct, yeah. The
Forthcoming on that one?
Absolutely forthcoming, thank you. And then the second item, just to make the commission aware of, is so a group of local partners, including the county, that have engaged around trying to make sure that we are progressing with economic development projects in the community. We've had some successes over the last couple of years, notably, Schwann's, Great Plains Kubota, Superior, not Superior Plumbing anymore, Superior Products, and some other folks who have chosen to expand. But as part of that, one of the things that has become apparent is the need for some relationship building in Topeka. You may recall that last year we supported the city of Saline in trying to get an allocation in the state budget for multifamily housing. We believe there are a number of other things like that, including not only housing, but childcare, workforce development, where this community, because of our economic successes and to position ourselves for future economic successes, we're going to need some state support. And so that group of partners has been discussing engaging with a governmental affairs representative aka lobbyist, to represent this community in Topeka. And so that is a project that we did not budget for as part of the 23 budget, but I have identified funding for how we could fit it in. The county's share of it would be less than $10,000. The Salina Area Chamber of Commerce will be taking the lead on that on behalf of the partners, and they will prepare an agreement which we will bring back to the commission for signature. But again, I just wanted you to be aware that was going on. It has been discussed publicly at the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Organization, I believe also at the Airport Authority. So wanted you all to be aware of that as well. So those are my 2 updates for today.
Any questions of the administrator? Seeing none, we'll move to item number 2.
Commissioners' comments?
Comments of the commission?
I missed last week's meeting out of town, but I would, a week ago, Wednesday, I did attend the North Central Kansas Planning Commission's annual banquet and found it to be quite beneficial. They had a really great speaker, maybe the best banquet speaker I've ever heard, but he was from Alberta, Canada. And his topic was basically 13 ways to kill your city and not grow. And believe me, it was directed at the smaller communities throughout America, and it nailed a bunch of them. Were right at Salina, Kansas, and other communities in this area also. So if there's ever any organizations that need a great speaker to promote their cities, this guy was really on the beam. So it was quite entertaining and beneficial for me to attend that banquet.
And I will say Wednesday I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting where many of the items that the administrator just spoke of were discussed. Thursday I attended the SCEDO meeting, and Friday attended the Thanksgiving dinner at the Senior Center. And it was pleased to see the number of department heads and other volunteers who stepped up. And I believe Rosie served over 380 meals that day. So, and one thing that was exciting that's going on over there, you can see the drive. That's quite evident. What you don't notice, because they've done such a great job of it, is a replacement of the windows. And they're getting to where I'm sure they're over half done with that, but the quality and the looks of these windows are fabulous. I was really impressed. You have to get up right on top of them to see if they're original or a replacement. So some good things are happening at the Senior Center. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move into item number 3, I'm sorry.
Announcements.
Any announcements?
Will be closed.
Okay, now we'll move into concept discussion.
Actually, I'll give an announcement that the city-county building would be closed Thursday and Friday of this week for Thanksgiving.
And we don't have to do another canvass.
No, there was no statewide recount, so you're off Wednesday.
That's good news.
Now we'll move
Now
to
concept discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I wanted to just talk about with the commissioners this morning was the potential of acquiring a software package to help us keep better track of capital projects. The way that our financial system is structured, all of our capital projects get lumped into one item in our financial software, and that makes it very difficult to track when we are dealing with multiple different projects as we are at the current time. So last year, at the end of the year, we identified that we had a little bit of extra funding, and the commission agreed to put that to 3 different projects, including a couple softwares, a bond software and timekeeping software. This year, I'm not as confident. I'm not recommending trying to identify some savings, but we have looked at CIP software. It's around $15,000. I think what we could do is divide that up amongst the different CIP funds that we have at the current time. So a portion of it would be county CIP, a portion of it Expo CIP, Health Department CIP, noxious weed capital outlay, and help us keep better track, because as the commission is aware, we have added quite a few new capital projects this year. We just, of course, we're talking about the courtrooms and then the associated moves that are that need to come before the courtrooms. And so it would be very helpful to be able to see each of those separately in one report, which we could then pass to the commission and to the public, rather than having them all on one big string that we have to manually separate out. So I wanted to float that idea out to the commissioners, get any feedback that you had around that. I will say one other thing, which is oftentimes CIP software is embedded in a larger software package for budgeting. I think switching our entire budget software is something that we probably need to look at in the future, but that is a massive undertaking, and our office right now, with all the capital projects going on, just doesn't have the time to devote to that and to do it well. So that's why I'm not recommending switching everything to a new software. I would like us to just focus specifically on CIP, because that is the what I'll call the pain point, or the area of failure that I see that we're not doing well. So
A couple questions. You would look to bring this early 2023?
yes.
And do you know the balance of the Commissioner's Contingency Fund of 2022, where it's at?
So I don't know an exact dollar amount off the top of my head. I do know that you did approve out of the Commissioner Contingency the funding to double up on the Planning and Zoning administrative assistant position as that person prepares to retire. But I think that was only around 6,000 or so, 8,000 out of the Commissioner Contingency. So there should be probably at least 16, 17 left at the end of the year.
I think the Commissioner's Contingency Fund only started with 25, didn't it? Is that the number?
Yes.
And if that isn't spent, it just becomes part of the CIP or EIP, or what magically happens to those dollars?
What magically happens to those dollars is that they become fund balance within the general fund. But what typically happens manually is that your commission at the end of the year gives authorization to our auditor, Randy Hoffmeyer, to transfer excess funds to CIP when he does the final audit. So yes, typically speaking, those go into CIP, but that doesn't happen automatically.
Okay. But there'd be no reason you can't purchase this CIP software during 2022. You're just not that far along?
If you tell me I need to in order to get it, I'm sure I could rush it along and make it happen. But that wasn't in my thought pattern, Commissioner. But yeah, I mean, if the commission is open to the idea of spending commissioner contingency on this, I think we could certainly try and make that happen. I just I was moving a little bit more slowly on it, but.
Well, the one thing I appreciate about the commissioner's contingency is when you spend it, you earmark it for a specific item, and you see how that was spent. And I appreciate that ability. Just taking it into 2023, and then somehow it's absorbed and spent somewhere else. You don't know how that money was used. I think I like the ability to say, this is what we did with these funds in that calendar year. I don't know if my fellow commissioners agree or disagree or even have an opinion on it.
Well, I have a thought on it, and not specifically that, but my lack of knowledge of how software works and so forth is, my question would be, why can we not just create another line item within those areas as you described and have that be that fund, as opposed to doing it with a whole new software that you're describing? I mean, is that not feasible? I don't know how that works.
Oh, that's a great question, Commissioner. So we could. There are a couple of things that software would get us beyond the capability that you're describing of just creating new line items. So if we just created new line items, what happens is that you start using up line items, and so eventually you have to, renumber the whole chart of accounts. But the other thing is, you are then limited to the capabilities that exist within CIC, which is our financial software. So that would be just pretty much static reporting. What a specific CIP package gives you is the ability to do to array things like over multiple years, which CIC tracks, 1 year at a time. So you could see the entirety of a project. So, for example, if we take the expo, right, that's over a 5-year period. So, and a lot of that work gets done over the winter time because that's when the expo's not as busy, and so that, of course, laps over. December's in 1 year, January's in another year. So a CIP package would give you the ability to see the full 5-year arc of that project in one place, as opposed to 5 separate reports. It also, it has some bells and whistles around not only seeing the numbers, but seeing visuals and tracking types of expenditures within a project. So we could create a separate line item by project, right? But it would still be, all of Expo would be in one line item, as opposed to having okay, this is Expo, the whole project, but this was what was spent on Barn 1, this was what was spent on the office, this was what was spent on Ag Hall, or this was what was spent on electrical, this was what was spent on plumbing, this was what, so it's sort of, it's more of a matrix than a line, I guess I would say.
Well, back to the budget part of this, and the commissioner's contingency part. You know, when this group of commissioners came on board, I think the commissioner's contingency was $100,000.
That's correct.
And we said, gosh, that's way too much. We don't need all that money. And my way of thinking at that time was it was there for the commissioners to use for their purposes within the commission itself. Which takes me to my next thought is perhaps we need to go back and increase that amount in the budgets in the years coming down the road, simply because since then we've had we've kind of directed the monies in there not towards commissioners' activities, but towards other things within the county that needed some money that didn't have it. And therefore, I'm just thinking out loud for 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think a great example of that is Equifest, right? I mean, because that was one of the things that Commissioner Contingency got spent on for the first year because we didn't have a separate Equifest line item. So you agreed to spend Commissioner Contingency on it, but that wasn't for the benefit of the commission. That was for the benefit of the community. So yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
And $25,000 in the scope of a $60-some million budget is not very much money. But it is very helpful to do projects such as you have just described. If you've got another $10,000 or $12,000, whatever that number might be. So just something to think about down the road.
No, I see where you're going, and I really like that. Appreciate that thought. Thank you.
And I know that one of the first items when I became a commissioner that we spent a large amount of our contingency fund was for the senior center when we took over their debt, and we paid, I think, $90,000 or more out of the contingency fund to make the senior services strong.
I'm not certain how that would have worked out had we not had those funds
That's
available.
exactly right.
And that still only paid a portion of that.
Yeah, the major portion, the bulk, but not all of it. You're right. And that's why I'm saying we're going into December. We have $16,000, $17,000 in there. If we agree that this is a viable project and needs to happen, why not earmark the Commissioner's Contingency Fund to fund it and get it going? And the funds, they'll be absorbed into the county budget, but here we'll know, well, this is what we as a commission decided to do in 2022. I'm just throwing that out. And I know there's only 3 of us here, so.
Well, in regards to the contingency fund, things do pop up, unexpected expenditures. That's an insurance policy that we could fund and utilize those. And the commissioners do have their own specific budget, which is basically for our salaries and office costs, and I don't know what all's in there. Phil could elaborate on that a little bit more. And I don't have a magic number, the $100,000. If you didn't spend it, it'd still roll over in the general fund at the end of the year. It was a good bank insurance policy, per se. And back at the original question here in regards to software, $15,000, it might be a good expenditure. I know our IT director would be proud of me talking about technology on this, but anyhow, I'm just throwing out thoughts or questions, Phil. Maybe you can fill some of the blanks in, because I have a lot of blanks. But unfortunately, with software packages, it always comes with training and maintenance costs, ongoing expenditures, and it's not just a one-shot deal.
Yeah, okay, so you are absolutely correct, Commissioner. So it is okay. It's a $33,500 expenditure over a 3-year period, the way the contract is currently drafted. So it is $9,500 a year for the software, and then $5,000 upfront for the training and implementation piece. So yeah, it's a $15,000, $14,500 cost in the first year, but then you're on the hook, so to speak, for $9,500 each year after that. So, I will say I was focused on the first $15,000 because that's the amount of money that we would need to come up with from somewhere that's not budgeted. The ongoing cost we would be able to budget as we prepare the 24-25 budgets. But you are absolutely correct that software does come with ongoing maintenance.
Okay, and is this a sole source provider? Are there other software companies that could do a better job and still incorporate with our present software for the finance?
So we have looked at a couple of different options. There are multiple providers. This would not be a sole source, but we feel like this is the one that, for the cost and the capability, is probably the best deal out of all the ones we've looked at.
And plus, it'll dovetail in with our present financial
Yes, they have assured us that they can grab data out of CIC and put it into their platform. Now, they do have one other current client who uses CIC, which is Pottawatomie County. But Pottawatomie County has just started that process, so how smoothly that will go, I mean, I'm sure they can do it, but how smoothly they can do it, I think is still an open question.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely in favor of some mechanism, whatever it is out there, whether it's a whiteboard or something, to keep better tracks of our CIP money. And if it's a tool that we can utilize, 15 grand is pretty cheap, you know? So however you want to, it might one of three speaking right now, but however you want to present it, yes, there's monies available probably within the whole county budget right now that could be used for that, or contingency fund. That's your call. So bring it before the board.
Any other discussion?
Is there consensus on bringing it forward?
Yeah, I would entertain a RFA to that extent. If doing it in 2022 will get you a jump start into 2023. I know we have a lot of projects going on right now that could be utilized for. So the quicker if we're going to do it, the quicker we get it up and running, the better off we're served. That's where I'm at.
That'll work.
Well, thank you for that discussion. It's very helpful, and there were some good ideas.
All right, it looks like we now go into, we have an executive session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff would move that the commission recess to executive session under the non-elected personnel exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act to discuss department head performance evaluation for 7 minutes and reconvene in this room at 10:16.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we move to recess to executive session for, under the non-elected exception of the Kansas Open Meetings Act, to discuss department head evaluation for 7 minutes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will be 10:17. Our regular session is back in order. I will say that no action was taken during this executive session. I think that concludes all our business. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We're moving second. We adjourn this county commission meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.